Alright, family. Sit down, lock the door, and put your phone on silent, because what just detonated between 50 Cent and Rick Ross is not a rap beef. It is not a diss track. It is not two Instagram accounts throwing pebbles at each other for engagement. What just happened is the closing argument of a 17-year corporate execution, delivered in broad daylight, in front of the entire culture, and the man delivering it did not write a single bar. He did not book a studio. He did not call a DJ. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson looked at a first-week number, a reported 17,000 album equivalent units for Rick Ross's 12th studio album, Set in Stone, debuting all the way down at number 45 on the Billboard 200, and he did what he has always done. He turned somebody else's funeral into his content calendar. Now hold on. I already know what you are about to type. You are about to say, this is the same old feud. This is the 2008 Officer Ricky situation. These are two grown men who should have shaken hands a decade ago. I hear you. I genuinely hear you. But you need to understand something, and I am going to say it loud enough for the people in the back. The 50 Cent who came for Rick Ross in 2008 does not exist anymore. That man was a rapper with a grudge and a cartoon series. The 50 Cent sitting at the head of the table in 2026 is a television mogul with a studio campus in Shreveport, Louisiana, a production slate that networks fight over, and a business model built on one terrifying principle: he does not get angry, he gets positioned. And Rick Ross? Rick Ross is not the untouchable Teflon Don of 2010 either. He is a legacy artist with a mansion the size of a hotel, a car show that draws thousands to his front lawn, a fleet of Wingstop franchises, and a first-week number that his worst enemy is currently reading aloud to 20 million followers like a eulogy. So here is what I am going to do for you tonight. I am going to walk you through all 17 years of this war, document by document, courtroom by courtroom, humiliation by humiliation. I am going to show you the night it started, the song that lit the fuse, the baby mama flyout that changed what beef was allowed to be, the sex tape verdict that cost $7 million, the bankruptcy filing that landed days later, the appellate ruling that Rick Ross actually won, yes, won, we are telling the whole truth in here, and the empire divergence that turned a rap argument into the most lopsided scoreboard in modern hip-hop. And by the end, you are going to understand why this summer's trolling is not the beef restarting. It is the beef reporting its final earnings. Let me set the stage properly, because if you do not understand where both men are standing right now, in August of 2026, none of the history is going to hit the way it should. On one side of the board you have Curtis Jackson, G-Unit Film and Television, The Power Universe on Starz, a show that premiered in 2014 and metastasized into an entire franchise galaxy. BMF, a pipeline of series and films that made him one of the most valuable independent producers in the business. And then, the move that told you everything about how this man's brain works, he went to Shreveport, Louisiana, and started converting close to 1 million square feet of industrial real estate into G-Unit studios. Not a rental. Not a vanity office with a logo on the door. A production city. In March of 2025, the Shreveport City Council unanimously approved a 30-year lease tied to a development plan reported at over $100 million. By the summer of 2025, the state of Louisiana was signing agreements with his company, and there were public plans for a permanent G-Dome downtown. While rappers were leasing jewelry, 50 Cent was leasing zip codes. And on the other side of the board, you have William Leonard Roberts too. Rick Ross, the biggest boss. And listen, I am not going to sit here and pretend the man is broke, because that would be a lie and we do not do lies on this channel. Rick Ross bought Evander Holyfield's former estate in Fayetteville, Georgia back in 2014, a 235-acre property with over 100 rooms, purchased for a reported $5.8 million, a property so large that people told him the upkeep alone would run close to $1 million a year. He named it the Promised Land. He built one of the biggest independent car shows in the South on that lawn. The 5th annual edition went down this past June with thousands of people pulling up. He has owned more Wingstop franchises than some restaurant groups. The myth of Rick Ross is not a myth. The man really built things. But, and this is the but that the entire story hangs on, the music stopped being the engine a long time ago, and everybody in the industry knows it except the fan base. Richer Than I Ever Been, his 2021 album, opened at number 22, and 50 Cent treated that number like Christmas morning. And now, in the summer of 2026, Set in Stone arrives, his 12th studio album, the album that was supposed to cement the legacy, and it moves a reported 17,000 units in week 1 and lands at number 45. Rick Ross came out and disputed the count, said his numbers were 22,000 in week 1 and blamed what he called fake bot propaganda, and he fired back at both 50 Cent and the Kid Mero for amplifying it. Fair enough. Every artist defends their number. But understand what happened next. 50 Cent did not argue about the math. 50 Cent declared the career over. Publicly. Casually. Like a man reading a weather report. And the reason that landed so hard, the reason the entire internet treated a troll post like a verdict, is because of everything I am about to walk you through. Because this war did not start with a chart position. It started with a look. A single look across an awards show floor in 2008. And let me be specific about why this story matters to you even if you have never streamed a single Rick Ross record or watched one episode of Power. Because this feud is not really about two men anymore. It is a live demonstration of the most important question in modern entertainment: what is a famous name actually worth when the numbers underneath it change? For 17 years, these two men have been running opposite answers to that question in public, in real time, with real money on the table. One of them built a mythology and spent 2 decades defending it. The other built a machine and spent 2 decades feeding it. And this summer, with one reported first-week figure and one Instagram post, the argument between those two philosophies produced its clearest scoreboard yet. So no, this is not nostalgia. This is not a throwback. This is the most instructive business story in hip-hop, wearing the costume of a rap beef and hiding in plain sight. And one more thing before we go any further, because I run a truthful shop here and the truth has a gatekeeper. Everything you are about to hear is pulled from the public record: chart data, court dockets, sworn verdicts, magazine profiles, council minutes, corporate announcements. Where the record is disputed, I will tell you it is disputed. Where both men tell different versions of the same night, you will get both versions. This feud has been buried under 15 years of fan fiction and barbershop mythology, and my job tonight is to dig it out, lay it on the table, and let you see the bones for yourself. Because the real story, the documented, check the docket story, is so much wilder than the legend that once you hear it, you will never listen to either of these men the same way again. Now, let me take you back to the origin, because the origin matters. Late 2008. The BET Hip Hop Awards in Atlanta. And depending on whose version you believe, and both men have told their version for years, Rick Ross felt like 50 Cent looked at him wrong. That is the whole inciting incident. Not a stolen verse. Not a business deal gone bad. A look. Now, most men take a bad look and go home and forget it by Tuesday. Rick Ross went into a recording booth. In January of 2009, on a record called Mafia Music, Ross took his shot. He referenced 50 Cent's name, he referenced the fire at 50's Long Island mansion, the home at the center of a vicious dispute between 50 and the mother of his son, and he essentially called 50's reign finished. It was one verse. A jab, really. The kind of thing that, in a normal rap universe, earns you one response record and a few weeks of headlines. Family, Rick Ross did not start a beef that night. He rang a bell that could never be unrung. Because here is what Rick Ross did not understand about the man he had just poked. 50 Cent came up in a different economy of conflict. This is a man who survived 9 bullets before he ever had a record deal, whose entire career was built on the total annihilation of Ja Rule, not out-rapping him, not outselling him, but out-enduring him, out-mocking him, dismantling the very idea of him until the culture flinched every time Ja Rule's name came up. 50 Cent does not respond to disrespect. 50 Cent responds to disrespect the way a mortgage responds to a missed payment. Forever. Compounding. So 50 Cent's answer to Mafia Music was not a song. I mean, there was a song, Officer Ricky, Go Ahead Try Me, released within weeks, January 2009, but the song was the least of it. The song was the envelope. The letter inside was a photo. Because 50 Cent's people had pulled a file that changed the temperature of the entire war, documented proof that William Roberts, the man rapping about moving bricks off the port of Miami, the man whose entire artistic identity was borrowed wholesale from a real incarcerated drug trafficker named Freeway Rick Ross, a lawsuit over the name itself would come later, keep that in your back pocket, had spent roughly 18 months in the mid-1990s working as a correctional officer in a Florida prison. Read that again, because this is the hinge the whole decade swings on. Not a rumor. Not a whisper. A record. A photograph. Payroll history. The self-declared biggest boss that you've seen thus far had, at one point, clocked in for the state of Florida with a badge and a pension plan. Now, in a sane industry, here's what happens next. The artist says, yes, I was young, I had a job, I paid bills, and then I became one of the biggest rappers alive, what about it? And honestly? That response works. America loves a come-up. But that is not what happened. What happened is one of the most consequential unforced errors in hip-hop history. Rick Ross denied it. He called the photo fake. He called the documents fabricated. He stood in front of the culture and said the evidence was manufactured, while the evidence was sitting there, stamped, dated, and verified. And that decision, that single decision, taught 50 Cent everything he needed to know. Because now the beef was not about a correctional job. Now the beef was about credibility itself. 50 Cent did not have to prove Rick Ross was fake. Rick Ross was proving it for him, one denial at a time. All 50 had to do was keep asking the question and let Ross keep answering it wrong. And this is where 50 Cent unveiled the weapon that made this feud historically different from everything that came before it. In 2009, beefs were still fought on wax, on radio, maybe on a DVD. 50 Cent took it to the internet and industrialized the humiliation. He launched the Officer Ricky cartoon series, animated shorts mocking Ross as a bumbling corrections officer, episode after episode, distributed free to a hungry young internet that had never seen a superstar weaponize content like this. This was before the meme economy had a name, family. 50 Cent was running a meme war in 2009 with a production schedule. And every episode did the same job, it kept that one question alive. Who is this man, really? But the cartoons were just the artillery. The ground invasion came next, and this is the part where even 50 Cent's critics, and he has many, and some of their points are fair, we will get there, even they had to admit they had never seen anything this cold. 50 Cent flew out Tia Kemp, the mother of Rick Ross's child. He put her on camera. He let her tell her side of the story, her account of their life together, her claims about what Ross had told her regarding his past employment. He took her shopping. He did a full photo shoot with her for Smooth Girl magazine, posing with the mother of his rival's son like it was a fashion editorial. Think about the psychology of that move. He did not insult Rick Ross's catalog. He did not insult Rick Ross's label. He walked directly into the most private room of Rick Ross's life, turned the lights on, and held a press conference in it. And I need you to understand the precedent this set, because we are living in the world it built. Before 2009, rap beef had rules. Unwritten, but real. You went at the man. His skills, his money, his street standing. 50 Cent looked at that rulebook and fed it to a shredder on camera. After Tia Kemp, the message to the entire industry was unmistakable. In a war with Curtis Jackson, there is no off-limits. Your family is a headline. Your ex is a booking. Your private life is content inventory. Every beef you have watched since, the flyouts, the family involvement, the courtroom receipts posted to Instagram, that playbook was written here, in this feud, in real time. Now, to his credit, and I give credit where the record says credit is due, Rick Ross did not fold. That is the part that still stuns historians of this feud. He kept making music. He kept the Maybach music engine running. He would go on to sign Meek Mill and Whale, drop Rich Forever, and spend the early 2010s as arguably the hottest brand in rap while 50's own music career cooled. Ross absorbed the single most devastating credibility attack in modern hip-hop and somehow outcharted the attacker for years afterward. Nobody before or since has survived an Officer Ricky. Ross did. Say what you want about the man, the chin is granite. But surviving is not the same as winning, and the difference between those two words is where the next chapter of this story lives. Because while Ross was winning the radio war, a court case was slowly loading in the background, and when it detonated, it hit 50 Cent where no rapper had ever hit him before. And while we are in this era, let me give you two pieces of context that most retrospectives leave on the cutting room floor, because without them the next 5 years make no sense. First piece, the name itself. Rick Ross did not just borrow a persona, he borrowed a man's government-level identity. The real Freeway Rick Ross, a Los Angeles trafficker whose case became one of the most infamous chapters of the crack era, spent years suing over the use of his name and likeness, arguing that William Roberts had built a platinum career wearing another man's biography like a costume. The courts ultimately sided with the rapper on First Amendment and timing grounds, but the fight itself told you something essential. From day one, the Rick Ross brand was a constructed mythology, brilliant marketing, undeniable, but constructed, and 50 Cent was the first person with a big enough platform to say the quiet part on a loop, every day, for years. Second piece, timing. Look at the calendar. In 2008 and 2009, 50 Cent was arguably still the most feared man in the genre. Get Rich or Die Tryin' was a decade-defining monument, the G-Unit empire was still warm, and his demolition of Ja Rule was recent enough that every rapper alive had watched it like a safety video. Beefing with 50 Cent in 2009 was widely considered career suicide. Artists softened their names around him. And into that environment walked Rick Ross, the new Def Jam signee with the untouchable aura, and he chose smoke. Voluntarily. Whatever you think of how the war ended, never let the record forget that Ross picked the fight with the most dangerous opponent available. At the exact moment doing so was considered madness. There is a version of history where that courage is the whole story. There is a reason it is not, and we are getting to it. Now here is the turn that made this feud genuinely historic instead of merely ugly, the counterpunch. Because after Officer Ricky, after the cartoons, after Tia Kemp, after a humiliation campaign that would have retired a normal artist, Rick Ross did something nobody was supposed to be able to do. He got bigger. In 2010 he dropped Teflon Don, and it was a masterpiece of brand warfare, bigger production, bigger guests, bigger mythology, a man rapping like the Expos had never happened. He launched Maybach Music Group and stacked it with real talent. He signed Meek Mill out of Philadelphia, one of the most important signings of the decade, and brought Will into the fold and gave both men a national runway. The self-made compilations ran radio. Rich Forever became a classic mixtape. By 2011 and 2012, while 50 Cent's music career was visibly cooling, Rick Ross was arguably the hottest rapper in America. Read that sentence again, because it is the most improbable sentence in this entire story. The man who was supposed to be a punchline became the establishment. The student of the humiliation era became the teacher of the win anyway era. Every young artist who has ever been ratioed, exposed, or clowned into a trending topic owes a small debt to the blueprint Ross wrote in those years. Never acknowledge the kill shot, outwork the news cycle, and let the next hit bury the last headline. And for a while, a long while, it worked. Which is exactly why the next chapter hurt so much when it finally arrived. Because gravity was patient, and gravity, like 50 Cent, does not forget. Let me set this scene carefully, because I want to be precise with you, family. Precision matters here, because what happened in this chapter is not funny, and I am not going to treat it as funny, and neither, ultimately, did a jury. In 2015, the war between 50 Cent and Rick Ross produced its single darkest artifact, and it had nothing to do with either man's music. At the center of it was a woman named Lastonia Leviston, the mother of one of Rick Ross's children. In 2009, at the height of the Officer Ricky campaign, 50 Cent had obtained an intimate video of Leviston with another man, edited himself into it as a mocking character, and posted it online as ammunition against Ross. She had never consented. She was not a rapper. She was not in the beef. She was a private citizen whose life got turned into a weapon in a war she never enlisted in. Leviston sued. She sued for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. And in 2015, after years of litigation, a New York jury looked at the evidence and delivered a number that stopped the entire industry mid-scroll, $5 million. Then, days later, the jury added $2 million more in punitive damages. $7 million, total, awarded to the mother of Rick Ross's child, against Curtis Jackson, for what a judge and jury determined was a deliberate, malicious act. And I want to sit in this moment for a beat, because this is the chapter where the scoreboard genuinely flips. Everything I told you about 50 Cent's ruthless brilliance in 2009? The flyouts, the photo shoots, the total war doctrine? This verdict is the receipt for that doctrine. The same instinct that made him untouchable in a beef, no limits, no off-limits, no mercy, is the exact instinct that put him in front of a jury. Rick Ross did not land this punch. Rick Ross did not even swing it. But it landed on his behalf, and it landed harder than any diss record ever recorded. And then, because this story has never once done anything halfway, came the plot twist that the culture still argues about to this day. Days after that $7 million verdict, 50 Cent filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Days. The timing was so surgical that people are still debating it a decade later, and here is the truth we can actually stand on: the bankruptcy was a legal shield. It was a wealth preservation maneuver in the face of a massive judgment and other legal exposures, including a separate multi-million-dollar arbitration loss over a headphone company. Rick Ross, to this day, says that courtroom chapter is when he learned 50 Cent was, his word, broke. 50 Cent's defenders say the opposite, that a man who files strategic bankruptcy while owning a mansion, a media company, and a vitamin water fortune is not broke, he is lawyered. Both readings of that moment are out there. What is not debatable is what happened in the years after. 50 Cent paid the judgment, exited bankruptcy, and started building the most profitable second act in the history of the genre. The man turned a $7 million public execution into a pivot. Remember that. That is the pattern. But hold on, because Rick Ross had one more card to play, and it was a good one, a genuinely historic one, and nobody gives him enough credit for it. In 2015, on his free mixtape Renzel Remixes, Ross rapped over 50 Cent's most valuable record, The Crown Jewel, into Club. 50 Cent sued him. Not over the beat, over the name and the voice. A right of publicity claim, filed in Connecticut, arguing that Ross had no right to use 50's recorded performance and stage name to promote himself. And this is where I have to be the honest narrator I promised you I would be, because the internet version of this feud skips this chapter, and skipping it makes you dumber about how this business actually works. In 2020, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, a federal appellate court, one level below the Supreme Court, ruled against 50 Cent. The court held that his right of publicity claim was preempted by the Copyright Act. The suit was thrown out. Rick Ross won. On paper. In federal court. Definitively. And Ross has never let it go quiet. He brings it up in interviews like a medal. He beat 50 Cent in court. Fact. Check the docket, Jackson vs. Roberts, Second Circuit, 2020. It is real, it is documented, and any narrator who hides it from you is selling you a highlight reel, not a history. But here is the question that should be forming in your mind right now, and it is the question this entire video was built to ask. If Rick Ross survived Officer Ricky, outcharted 50 Cent for years, watched him eat a $7 million verdict, watched him file bankruptcy, and then beat him in federal court, if Rick Ross won all of that, then why, in August of 2026, does it feel like he lost? Why does one troll post from 50 Cent about a first-week number hit like a summary judgment? Why does the culture laugh with 50 and at Ross every single time, like it is reflex? Because while the beef was busy being a beef, something else was happening. Quietly. Underneath. The two men stopped being two rappers and became two business models. And business models do not have arguments. They have outcomes. That is the next chapter. That is the chapter where this stops being a rap story and starts being a case study that Wharton could teach. Now, between the verdict and the appellate ruling, there is a stretch of years that looks quiet from the outside. No Officer Ricky cartoons, no flyouts, no seven-figure judgments, but do not let the silence fool you, because this is the stretch where the war changed shape. From 2016 through 2019, the beef went subterranean. It became a cold war of interviews and Instagram captions. 50 Cent would go on a press run for power and, somewhere between questions about the show, slip in a joke about correctional work, casual, smiling, like a man watering a plant he planted years ago. Rick Ross would sit for a big profile, get asked about 50, and wave him off as irrelevant, a man whose music career was behind him. And here is what was really happening under those exchanges. Both men were test marketing the narrative. 50 was testing whether the Officer Ricky charge still had voltage. Ross was testing whether the culture would let him declare the feud finished by fiat. The scorecard from those years? The culture remembered the cartoon. It never fully let the charge die. Every comment section, every throwback post, every anniversary of Teflon Don, there it was, in the replies, the badge, the photo, the payroll record. 50 Cent had not just won a news cycle back in 2009. He had installed a permanent piece of furniture in the public's memory, and no amount of hit records could move it out of the room. And that is the strategic horror of what 50 Cent built, family. A diss track decays. A headline fades. But a meme with a document attached to it? That is archival. That lives in the culture's permanent storage. Rick Ross could go platinum, sell out tours, buy a mansion off a boxing legend, and the first reply under every achievement would still be a cartoon of a man in a correctional uniform. No court could enjoin it. No publicist could spin it. It was, and is, the single most durable act of brand vandalism in hip-hop history. Now let me tell you about the parallel track that was running underneath all of this, because this is where the story stops being about pride and starts being about infrastructure. While the Cold War simmered, 50 Cent was quietly executing the greatest career pivot the genre has ever seen. The music slowed down by design. The television operation scaled up by obsession. Power premiered on Starz in June of 2014 and grew, season by season, from a solid cable drama into the backbone of an entire network strategy. When it worked, 50 did not celebrate, he replicated. Spin-offs. Development deals. Then BMF, another franchise built on real street history, another hit. Watch the pattern, because it is the exact opposite of the rapper's playbook. A rapper's career is a series of auditions, every album re-auditions for the public's love. 50 Cent got tired of auditioning. So he stopped trying to be the talent and started being the venue. The man who owns the stage never has to worry about getting booed off it. He gets paid by everybody who performs, whether the crowd cheers or not. And meanwhile, on the other side, Rick Ross was building too, do not let anyone tell you different, but he was building a different species of thing. The Wingstop franchises, real cash flow, real payrolls, but tied to his personal brand halo. The Promised Land, a genuine asset masterstroke, bought for a reported $5.8 million in 2014, a property that had broken a heavyweight champion's finances, now hosting film shoots and, eventually, one of the South's biggest independently hosted car shows. The Maybach music roster, Meek, Whale, a genuine hit factory at its peak. All of it real. All of it impressive. And all of it, every single brick, mortgaged against one thing, the continued believability of the Rick Ross mythology. The boss brand. The untouchable Don. Keep that architecture in your mind, because when we get to the final chapter, you are going to watch a first-week sales number lean against that mythology, and you are going to hear the whole structure creak. Now I need you to zoom out with me, all the way out, past the diss tracks, past the courtrooms, past the memes, and look at the actual architecture of these two careers, because the divergence is the story. Start with 50 Cent. The vitamin water deal, way back in 2007, was the seed, equity instead of a check, a payout reported in the 9 figures when Coca-Cola bought the company. That single decision rewired how an entire generation of rappers talked about money. But watch what he did with it. He did not buy louder chains. He built G-Unit Film and Television. In 2014 he put Power on Starz, a show the critics initially dismissed as a rapper's vanity project, and it became the engine of an entire franchise, spin-offs, renewals, a universe. Then BMF. Then series after series, to the point where networks now treat Curtis Jackson as infrastructure. And then came the move I keep coming back to, because it tells you exactly how far ahead of the frame this man is thinking, Shreveport. A 30-year, city-approved lease. A development plan reported north of $100 million. A production campus measured in hundreds of thousands of square feet, with state agreements signed in 2025 and a permanent G-Dome planned for downtown. Family, rappers flex watches. This man is flexing municipal partnerships. He is not in the music business anymore. The music business is a rounding error in his portfolio, and that is precisely why he can wage this feud forever at zero cost. Every troll post is marketing for a brand that no longer depends on a single chart position. He monetized the grudge itself. Now look across the board at the Rick Ross model, and be fair to it, because there is real genius in it too. The Wingstop empire, dozens of franchises, a genuine cash flow business. The Promised Land, bought smart, $5.8 million for a property that had humbled a heavyweight champion, and turned into a working asset, film location, event venue, and the home of the biggest independently hosted car show in Southern hip-hop, which just ran its 5th annual edition this June with thousands flooding Fayetteville. The Maybach Music Group brand that, at its peak, ran radio through Meek Mill and Whale. The man built a real, diversified, cash-generating life. That is not nothing. That is more than 99% of rappers ever build. But here is the asymmetry, and it is brutal in its simplicity. Rick Ross's empire still needs Rick Ross. The brand is the man. The car show needs his name on the flyer. The catalog needs his persona to be believed. And the persona, the biggest boss, the untouchable Don, is precisely the thing this feud spends 17 years subpoenaing. 50 Cent's empire, by contrast, would survive 50 Cent going silent tomorrow. Power does not need his playlist. Shreveport does not need his chart position. One man built a brand that requires his mythology to stay intact. The other built systems that pay him regardless of what anybody says about him. And every time the first week number comes in soft, number 22 in 2021, a reported 17,000 units, and number 45 for Set in Stone in 2026, it is not just a bad sales week. It is a stress fracture in the load-bearing wall of the entire mythology. That is why 50 Cent reads those numbers aloud like scripture. He is not mocking an album. He is mocking a business model. And that brings us to now. August 2026. The 12th album is out. The number is what it is. Ross says 22,000 and blames bots. The chart says 17 and change, and honestly, for the purpose of this story, the argument over 5,000 units is the saddest part of all, because 2006 Rick Ross would not have stopped rolling his cigar to acknowledge it. 50 Cent declares the career over from a phone, probably sitting on a soundstage he owns. Ross fires back at 50 and the Kid Marrow, calls it propaganda, points to his second week hold. The internet does what the internet does, memes within the hour, the employee of the month edits, the W2 photoshops. 17 years, and the rhythm has not changed, because the rhythm works. And the culture, the same culture that crowned the Teflon Don in 2010, now treats this feud like a rerun where everybody already knows the ending. So here is where I land, and then I want your verdict in the thread, raw and unfiltered. Was this ever really a rap beef? Or was it a 17-year demonstration of a single lesson, that in the long run, the paperwork beats the punchlines? Rick Ross won rounds. Real ones. The survival after Officer Ricky. The 2020 appellate win. The years he outsold the man who tried to end him. That all happened. But 50 Cent never needed to win rounds. He only needed the war to last long enough for the world to change around it, and it did. The music faded, the systems remained, and now every jab lands on a man defending a number instead of a throne. Drop your verdict below. Who actually won this war, the man who survived everything, or the man who never needed to survive anything because he built something the beef could not touch? Is the Set in Stone trolling the last chapter, or just the latest? And tell me which feud I should autopsy next. I am reading every comment tonight, and the best take is getting pinned. Subscribe if you want part 2, because the full courtroom files from the Leviston case and the Second Circuit ruling deserve their own documentary, and I have already started pulling them. Stay locked in. Stay sharp. And remember the only rule this feud ever actually proved, it is never about who raps better. It is about who is still standing when the music stops, and whose name is on the building when it does. But before you cast that vote, let me widen the lens one last time, because there is a bigger story hiding inside this one, and it affects every artist you love. The 50 Cent and Rick Ross war is 17 years old now. It has outlasted record labels, social media platforms, entire eras of the genre. Think about what it survived. It survived the death of the mixtape economy it was born in. It survived the rise of streaming, which changed what a first-week number even means. It survived Drake and Meek, Pusha and Drake, an entire generation of beefs that burned hotter and died faster. It survived a bankruptcy, a federal appeal, a pandemic, and at least 4 separate announcements that it was finally over. Nothing in modern hip-hop has been this durable. And its durability teaches the lesson neither man probably intended to teach. In the end, a beef is not won by the better rapper, or the richer man, or even the man who wins in court. It is won by the man whose life no longer depends on the argument. 50 Cent reached that altitude. Rick Ross, for all his genuine success, never fully did, because his brand is a promise his numbers have to keep, and promises get expensive when the numbers shrink. And do not sleep on what this summer means for the mythology economy going forward. Because every legacy artist in the game watched the Set in Stone week unfold. They watched a 12th album by a certified legend debut at number 45, watched his oldest enemy read the number to millions, and watched the culture laugh, not at the album, at the gap. The gap between the mythology and the math. Every artist in that watching crowd went home and asked their accountant the same question: if my number came in soft tomorrow, what would my enemies say I am? And how many of them would be right? That is the real fallout of this 17-year war. It did not just define 2 careers. It repriced every mythology in the genre. The boss talk got more expensive. The receipts got more valuable. And the man holding the biggest stack of receipts, as always, is the man who never stopped collecting them.